Okay, hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Tech and Learning Conversations. I'm Kevin Hogan. I'm glad you found us. With us today are two folks who are going to help talk about teacher happiness. It's something that we always talk about in the hopes of working with teachers. We know they're under stress. We know that they're sometimes disengaged in the classroom with multiple problems in terms of communicating not only with students, but with parents. Add in some COVID, add in some other kind of generational traumas that we're going through. The one thing about this conversation, we have some data to back up, but is usually just kind of an ethereal conversation where we wring our hands. So, but Julia from Vivi, who brought together the 2025 report, and Peter Emmel, he's a director of technology here in the great state of New Jersey, who manages the technology in the district and has some really great insights, I think, into how you, the reader, the listener, the watcher, can take some of this data and apply it in ways that you can do for your own schools and in your own districts. I hope you find it interesting. Have a look. Okay, Peter, Juliana, thanks so much for meeting with me today. I really appreciate it. I just want to kind of get started. Maybe Juliana, we could just start talking about the report. Go right into the news here. Recent survey just dropped through your work and work with the research associates, talking about something that we find to be more and more on the top of people's minds right now, which is not necessarily the effectiveness of technology, but the effectiveness of building communication, especially when it comes to teachers. Can you kind of get us started and talk about why you did this survey?
Yeah, so we actually partnered with Full Scale on this, which was great. Our big focus was to figure out what were the key drivers that enable teachers to feel successful. A lot of times we talked about like the data around are they successful, but in a moment of time with like a ton of different tech innovation across the board, like how are we building the system supports conditions to enable teachers to feel successful? Because when you feel successful, I always use the example, I'm like, even if you are successful at something, unless you feel successful, you're not willing to take risks. You're not willing to like lean in. You're not willing to try new things. But also, I mean, that comes from, and Peter, we've talked about this, it comes from like the district too, of like, do you have a culture where you can have vulnerability to try those new things? And so it's kind of like those two pairings. So we actually were super excited that we got 1,750, a little over, completed surveys by teachers globally about like what are those things that make them feel successful in the classroom so that we're not just like having tech be done onto teachers, but actually getting them excited and building that buy-in early, but making sure that they're ready to have that buy-in. Because when you're like overtaxed and you're just like, I feel like I'm not doing anything right, you're not going to be like, okay, cool, I'll raise my hand to do that next thing or try that next thing. And so I think just looking at those feelings of within is so important, and thinking back to my classroom days too.
Yeah. And Peter, when you look at the results, I mean, do they resonate with what you see day to day in the district?
I do. I think that teachers they they see student engagement as a critical component to managing their classroom or ensuring that like the educational process is moving forward properly, right? And teachers are always so focused on the growth of a student versus what's the next assessment that they have to take, right? And so anytime that we are able to empower them with tools that help improve that engagement or kind of aid them in that is something that we get a lot of positive response from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, I was going to add because I was like the reason we did the study and then the findings I wanted to highlight too. It was interesting that teachers' perception of success, and Peter just mentioned this, changes as they feel like they've mastered different key drivers. So like if you feel like you've mastered classroom management, then you can start looking at like how am I building teacher student connection? How am I building that active engagement? And then like once you've gotten there, that high quality instruction. So how you identify yourself as feeling successful actually changes over time as you feel like you've kind of like Peter just said with the active engagement. It's hard to do that if you don't feel like you have strong classroom management and culture.
Mhm.
And so there's kind of this like overtime piece as well. And then also, if you feel successful, are you going to stay in that school district? The other question is, how do you build that sense of community across the board? So that's what we call kind of that like unlocking mechanism, is like, how do you also feel connected to your community, connected to your school more broadly, so that not only do you feel successful in your district, but you want to stay in that district to see that change and be a part of that change, which is so important right now as well.
Yeah. So not to date myself, but I guess I will. Been covering education technology for a while, to where we would at Tech and Learning have articles about, will computers work in the classroom, right? And there's always been kind of this sense of, um, this is just from my perception, but for teachers generally, maybe not the subscribers to Tech and Learning, but overall, are maybe skeptical of having technology, whatever that means. Even going back from computers or laptops to obviously the cell phone and social media and those sort of tools in the classroom, but as well as, and I thought it was interesting in the survey that they talked about administrative efficiency as opposed to interaction and collaboration, and what those tools means, and how technology is supposed to support the classroom. I think a lot of teachers would initially say, "Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I know what I'm doing here. I've always taught algebra this way, and I can still keep doing it this way. I don't need a tool to support me there, or give me data to say, well, so Johnny has improved 7.7%, and they see themselves more artists maybe than data analysts." Peter, and be you could talk to that long-winded spiel about what you see teachers' impressions are of the technology that they're handed at the beginning of a school year, and how they can use it, and whether it's just a curriculum tool or data assessment, that administrative efficiency aspect.
I think with any tool or any technology that we hand to a teacher, it's first and foremost is, where is the value to the educational process? How are we going to see an improvement to the student? And so when we say we have this new widget, but there's no clear there's no definition as to how to use it. Teachers say, "Well, I already know how to teach this, so I don't need this extra thing because you haven't given me any real like understanding of how it may be better." Right. And so I think it's a matter of like, you have to collaborate with those individuals, from the top down and the bottom up, from the standpoint of how are they teaching that class? Where can technology help to engage the learner that doesn't want to raise their hand?
Mhm.
Right. Or the student that can't necessarily follow at the same pace as every other, student. And how do we leverage technology to support differentiation and just meeting students where they need to meet us? So I think I know for me, when we look at new technologies, first and foremost is understanding, well, what is the pain point in the classroom? And how will any technology that we bring forward help with that pain point, or help evolve how educate how instruction is happening? Right. We don't want to just it doesn't we don't want it to be just a replacement. Just because I gave you a projector, but you're going to use the projector the same way as you used a chalkboard, then there's no value there. It's just replacing one for the other. It's how we're going to like transform the classroom to say, well, now that we have a projector, we can do these video engagements, or we can have student interaction, or things along those lines. So as any new technology, from the time of the computer in the classroom and how will it work, honestly, even before that, when the calculator made its appearance in education, and how will that affect mathematics up into where AI is today? It's how does it help meet students where they need, so that they can get the same level of impact as wherever the middle of the growth is, where most students exist. So that way everyone gets that same opportunity. And I think as teachers see that, how it benefits students, there's more buy-in. Oh, this is going to help me reach more of my students, or I'm talking in the same language because, hey, my students are walking in sometimes with more technical skills than the teacher has.
Right.
And so we want to provide tools or work with teachers so that they have the ability to have control of their classroom, but also be able to like meet those students where they need to be met. And I think that's a critical component when we talk about bringing technology in,
I
because yeah.
Oh, no, I was I ditto all of that. And I think like I'll age myself as well, thinking through like the blended learning revolution and like, over in like 20, what was it, 13. Um, it's all about, like you said, I mean, and every example you gave was like really grounding in the why. Like, why are we using this technology? What is the instructional challenge we currently have that we want to leverage this technology to meet? And then I always kind of like, when thinking about professional development, which is kind of one of my passions from before too, is like, how are we, and I know you guys do a great job at this at your district, is like teaching and engaging all stakeholders, and that not just how do you use this technology, but how do you implement this technology to build teacher capacity, to impact student learning, to ensure more equitable access, like not just tech for tech. And I mean, we've seen this from, 2012 when it was like we had like the station rotation flex in the lab model, right? And it was like, okay, we're looking at the models, and now we've definitely moved to this more, how do we build in flexibility by leveraging technology to break down those barriers to really enable strong pedagogical practices in our classrooms? Because a lot of the things we're doing in our classrooms now is like what we wanted to do before, but we didn't have the tools to enable those and enable those in a capacity fulfilling way. Right. And so I think that that's where I go to is, unless the tech has a strong why and it's addressing a challenge of that school, that community, then the teachers get behind it. Right.
Mhm.
But if they're just like, oh, you need to use this app. Well, why? What is it? What is it helping with? And how is it changing the way my students are learning? Or is it offering more access? So I think all of those things really, you know, need to be working together, is like leveraging technology to change those pedagogical practices. And I've seen that, Peter, like with your science classrooms, right? It's like all of a sudden they're like, oh, we can do what?
Right, but there's also a question of scale, which I've found with districts in terms of, you do a survey of teachers here, right? So you have 1,700, but you probably have 1,700 teachers maybe in your district, Peter, and each of those are a different person with different expectations and different tolerances. And
Very true.
state of New Jersey, you throw in the union, and you can get even some more added complications to how tech is going to be implemented to them. How do you work around the idea of, say there's that individual science class that is doing extraordinary things using a particular piece of technology? How do you take that and scale that and maybe kind of build that culture across the district?
Well, I look at it as more like, instead of working around, is like working with, right? Like I work with from our district administrators to, our principals or supervisors. I meet with our union leadership, our union reps. I try to understand where are their pain points. And as we start to see teachers that have really demonstrated that this technology is really changing the way that they teach students, or really providing it the next level of engagement that they don't really have, we lean on them as our champions to say, look what's happening in this classroom and how they're leveraging the technology. We bring in our instructional coaches, which are basically teachers that teach teachers, and have them understand it and kind of get their buy-in. So as they start to reach out to their peers, they can have the organic conversation of, oh, you really should see what John is doing in his math class. Like, you'll love it, right? Because when it doesn't just come from the director of technology in a office that no one knows about, right? Or it comes from random administrator that thinks it's the greatest thing, since sliced bread. It's different when it comes from a peer and they see their peers using it. And then it becomes that organic, oh, well, I want that. Like I would love to see that technology.
Yeah.
At the same time, making sure that our administrators and our admin team and our union leadership also understand the values, so that they are also be interested in, oh, I want that, like, as well. So it's almost like building this desire that at every level there's an interest and a need and a want. So by the time we say as a district we're rolling out this product, well, there will always be pushback. Without doubt, humans don't like change. There will be at least a small percentage of humans that say, I don't want it. And we have to understand that. But if there's a big enough percentage of the population that's asking for it and advocating for it, they will kind of help their peers come along. When you have a dozen teachers that are all speaking the same language and know how to use the tool, the one or two that are against it, it's not just having to go to a PD. It's, oh, my partner can show me how to do it. Oh, my supervisor knows how to use it. And, oh, even the superintendent of schools uses some of these technologies. And so really it's that community buy-in. I try to approach it from every angle, so that way I have enough people that say yes, that we can help the ones that don't maybe see the vision at the start or just very set in their ways, to help them come along as well.
Yeah. Juliana, maybe talk a little bit about from the industry side, and when you look at these results and how they will help guide your product creation and curation and development in terms of where your company is going next in terms of the servicing for school districts.
So yes, no, I think that when looking at these studies, it's really important. The teachers are the ones using our product, right? Teachers are the ones using Vivi, but they're not necessarily the ones buying the Vivi. So I think that this study really helped us to truly understand, what do those teachers need in this moment? And then how can we also share that with our leaders that we work with, so that when they are buying something, that they're intentionally rolling it out to meet these needs. And I think that a lot of times, because when you're buying a product, like Vivi, for example, Peter, it's like they may be looking at their needs and their pain points, right? And then also trying to build those dotted lines. Cause, we've always had a challenge in education of like getting like the CTO or the CIO in the same room as the CAO, and making sure, how are those two working together? Because it is really challenging, especially at bigger districts. So, like, how do we both, by our understanding and thinking through our product board going forward, and making sure that it doesn't just meet the needs of now, but that we're looking at future proofing what that offering is and enabling it to support across multiple stakeholders. Like Peter said, that it's hitting the needs of the tech side, but also the instructional side, the student side, so that they're not trying to use one thing for each one. So as we're looking at this, I think for us from a business side, it's like, okay, how are we making sure we're hitting both of those, and that we can share those findings with the district to say, here are some of the things the teachers are asking for, and these are the ways that you can leverage Vivi to support that active engagement or support that teacher-student connection. Just from like untethering a teacher from the front of the classroom allows them to have positional presence. We're seeing a lot of schools get just carts, getting rid of their desks and just having a cart so that they can move more flexibly around the room. And like pedagogically, that is amazing to see, like moving away from that sage on the stage, which we've seen for so many years, by leveraging a tech to do what they've been wanting to do, but we've been like literally tethered by like an HDMI cord. so it's like I think of some of the lengths of the HDMI cords have gotten like crazy. And so I think from a business stance, it's like, how can we really understand the folks who are using it? How can we translate that and share that with the folks we're working with, so that we can ensure they're able to leverage the tool to its highest impact?
Yeah. Peter, when you look at the survey, can you offer any sort of advice for our readers and listeners who are resonating with those gaps that they see in their own school and in their own districts, and how to close those gaps and how to improve what we've just been talking about here, which is just that teacher engagement and the teachers having a feeling of success, building a culture of putting those skills. What would be the first steps for someone to do if, say, they're a director of technology, or even if they're just an innovative chemistry teacher who wants to kind of improve the way that their school operates?
I think the first step is putting yourself in the awkward conversation. When I took over as a director of technology, the first thing that I did is I met with in every building, with every department, with every teacher. Teachers that said they were unhappy, I was like, can I come to your classroom and can I just hear what you don't like? And it was uncomfortable, because sometimes, or most times, it was, I don't like fill in the blank tech thing and you're the reason, right?
Yeah.
But people want to be heard. And a lot of them have great ideas. They don't know how to like express that need, or they feel like I've said it before and no one's listening. And so I think that biggest step is going to the root, going to the teachers and saying, how do you use the tech? Help me understand what does and doesn't work for you. And if you had the ability to do anything, what would that be? Next is definitely partnering with whoever's your internal like professional development team, right? In our case, we have instructional coaches. If not, it's partnering with your instructional and curriculum people to say, listen, like here's the tech we have today, here's the feedback. What are your pain points? What are your objectives? And then trying to find technologies that can kind of bridge the gaps of both. And less is more in my approach, right? If you have 20 different technologies that a teacher has to learn and use, you've already lost many of them. Honestly, most people you lose when you're like 20 different things to worry about. It's too much for us to like keep together. And so finding technologies that kind of bring in a lot of these good resources, these supports where a teacher can share to their screen, but also have student sharing and student engagement right inside the same app and the same platform is critical. The less that they have to learn about, the less that they have to demonstrate to the student, the more they're willing to engage or engage deeper in whatever the technology product is. But yeah, reaching out to staff, talking to them and getting feedback. And I don't necessarily mean just surveys. Like surveys are great, but in a school district, FaceTime goes a long way. You get a lot more organic feedback, and that's what you're looking for. That's how you can build that culture, is if they know, oh, you listened to me. And oh, you did a thing that maybe it wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I see that you heard me, and then change occurred. And over time, you get more of that buy-in where now the teachers that you can reach out to be like, listen, I have a new idea. Can I run it by you? What do you think? And who are your peers that might be interested in this? Can we run it by them? A lot of the tech that I bring, in fact, most of the tech that I bring in, especially with teachers, I'm working with teachers before I've even presented it to my overall team as a mechanism to say, hey, I think we should do this, because I need to know that it works from an instructional standpoint, or at least I have some people that are willing to be my champions and kind of work with me on this, because if I'm alone, you're going to get no one and you'll have too much pushback. So talking to the people, my top one, if I had to give it to anyone, talk to your people and understand what their needs are face to face as best as you can.
Yeah. Love it. Great insights there. And I always love when I have a conversation and the toughest thing is for me to end it. We could keep going here for a while. There's a lot more data in that report. I encourage all of our readers and our listeners to download it. I'll have the link in the file here so people can go get to it. But Juliana and Peter, thank you so much once again for your time and for your insights. I think they're really going to be helpful for our readers.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, absolutely.
So thanks again to Juliana and to Peter for a great conversation. I thought. I hope you found the insights to be as valuable as I did. If you find them valuable, please forward it along to some of your colleagues who also might be able to benefit from this sort of information. And be sure to download the report itself. It's chock full with numbers and data that I think you can find valuable. So once again, thanks for finding us here at Tech and Learning Conversations. I hope you have a good rest of 2025 and look forward to more talks next year.